Welcome to Complinet Global Newscasts. News featured is taken from Complinet Complete, our news, analysis and tracking service, and your comprehensive view of the regulatory landscape. In the US, final negotiations were held in Congress to produce a bill for presidential signature in time for the July 4th recess. In the meantime, the Federal Reserve and other federal banking regulators issued final guidance for US banks regarding the structure of incentive compensation programs. The guidance follows proposals originally floated at the end of last year and aims to prevent banks from creating incentives for officers and employees to take undue risk. Our New York managing editor, Scott McCleskey, says the guidance is a significant step in financial reform.
The Fed is really taking the lead on pay structure here, and they're being pretty aggressive about it. Although there's some flexibility in how the principles are implemented, especially for smaller banks, the Fed has said that each and every bank examination is now going to include a look at how the bank has complied with this guidance. They're also making the boards directly responsible for active and effective oversight of compensation, which puts the directors on the hook if anything slips through the cracks.
In the Middle East, the Dubai Financial Services Authority has published a Dear SEO letter to all authorised firms and ancillary services providers regarding the actions required following the publication of the United Nations Security Council Resolution 1929, adopted on June 9, 2010, which extended the scope of sanctions to be imposed on Iran. We spoke to Complinet's Regulatory Affairs Editor Susanna Hammond about the DFSA's recommendations.
For the first time, the DFSA has made clear to all firms the actions required coming out of the UN sanctions. The Iranian sanctions were controversial when they came through, but the DFSA has made very clear the actions required from all firms and their ancillary services providers that they must take in the wake of that. Firms must not only undertake a whole series of re-verification, both correspondent banking and flow of funds, source of funds, but also must make sure they have evidence that. Without that evidence, they will not be able to prove to the regulator they have done the actions required.
And finally, in Asia this week, Hong Kong Securities and Futures Commission plans to make initiatives on corporate social responsibility one of its priorities next year, according to Martin Wheatley, the SFC's chief executive. He said the SFC's recently established CSR committee had already started implementing programs to expand the scope of the regulator's past endeavours in the field of CSR, noting that the market could expect more initiatives on CSR launched in the coming months. More than the means to communicate to the public and stakeholders our accountability for the community, CSR is also an important organisational culture and value that we are keen to further develop on our existing foundation. To read about these or any other stories from Complinet in more depth, please log into complinet.com or contact us if you would like a free trial. Join us next week for another newscast from the Complinet Global News team.